Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, I have stories involving both Bigfoot and reptilians to tell you all about today, folks. Both stories sounding, well, they sound good. Let's start off with the first article and story titled, Teen Encounters Female Bigfoot Mindspeak Warning. And here about this encounter with this female telepathic Bigfoot. So, let's get into this story now. This happened when I was a teenage girl in an area of Kentucky called Kettle Creek. I was staying on a 500-acre property known as God's Land. I'd been walking to the woods with a friend's dog. When we crossed a small creek on the other side, I noticed something bent over among the blackberry bushes. The dog saw it before I did and reacted in a way I'd never seen before. She began lunging toward it, snarling, barking, growling, and snapping at the air. I kept looking back and forth between the dog and the creature, which I initially believed was a black bear. The dog seemed to be trying to keep its attention focused on her so it could escape. I was panicking internally because I was deathly afraid of bears. So, she thought it was a bear here, folks. So the way that she saw the dog reacting probably would be, well, what most people would think here, folks, that this is a bear. The dog was reacting badly to it because of its presence there and being so near to its, well, to its human. But that's just me basically speculating. Let's get back to the actual story. When I looked back at the creature, it stood upright and faced me. Its head was turned slightly as it appeared to watch both the dog and me at the same time. Its expression seemed serious, although I could not clearly interpret it. I locked eyes with it for several seconds. I could not understand what I was seeing. Despite being terrified, I had a clear view of its face and tried to absorb as many details as possible. It did not have the face of a bear. There was no muzzle or protruding snout. Black hair with reddish coloring around the forehead and cheeks outlined the structure of its face. Its eyes seemed expressive, but I could not read them. The face was rounded. There was no beard or mustache, although hair extended across the upper cheeks. Its eyes were large and glistening, dark brown with a small amount of white visible along the outer ridges. Its eyelashes were dark, either black or dark brown. It sounds rather human-like from the description, folks, but, well, I think she's going to give us a few more details about how inhuman it is, especially with, well, how hairy it is. Now, she goes on to say the nose was somewhat human in shape, but much larger and slightly flattened or spread outward. Its mouth was extremely wide, almost too large for its face, and its lips were thin. Thankfully, I never saw its teeth. For some reason, I could not stop looking at its mouth. Then I heard the words, "Control the dog, or it will be no more." I looked at the dog and tried to coax her toward me. When I looked back at the creature, I could not understand how it had spoken because its mouth had never moved. My eyes were turned to its mouth. I heard the same words again. This time, the message was much more demanding. Yeah. In a lot of accounts with basically Bigfoot or even UFOs and aliens encountering dogs, a lot of the time, these entities take a very dour look at pets, especially if they're barking at them the way this dog is trying to do right here, folks. So, yeah, I can imagine that this Bigfoot wanted her to control her dog. But let's get back to the actual story. I grabbed the dog by the scruff of her neck and tried to pull her beside me, but she broke free. When I looked up again, the creature's eyes were fixed on the dog. I knew that if I did not regain control of her, the dog was going to die. I grabbed the dog again, this time with a firmer grip, and pulled her toward me. As I did, a strange feeling of calm suddenly surrounded both of us. I began pushing the dog to my left and away from a boulder behind me. My attention remained on the dog rather than the creature. When I finally released her, the dog ran toward the front meadow without waiting for me. I briefly turned back toward the creature. It was beginning to turn away and bend down into the blackberry bushes again. That was when I noticed its breasts moving as it turned. I realized the creature was female. Now, I would love to know if the, well, creature that was apparently mind-speaking with this teenage girl, what it sounded like to her. Did it sound male or female? Presumably, it was like basically just a compulsion and a thought in her head, folks, so maybe no real, well, way to determine its gender from just a mind speak alone. But clearly, the witness here thought it was female from basically the physical properties of it. Either way, let's continue. I often wondered why I did not examine the rest of the body more carefully at the time, I decided to leave it alone. It had not attacked or eaten me, despite the frightening stories I had heard from people around the property. That evening, shortly before sunset, I heard another voice inside my head. This voice felt deeper than the first. It said, "Now that you have seen us, we will have to come get you." That message frightened me so badly that I packed everything I owned and left early the following morning. I told no one on the property what had happened. I did not know how to explain something that I did not understand myself. Now, that is a threatening message there, folks, and if these entities could get her, they probably could have easily have done so, because if indeed this entity was telepathic, I doubt that anyone could have stopped any of these creatures from getting this teenage girl, folks. It sounds like to me, though, it could have been a joke. I've heard Bigfoot like to play jokes on people, sometimes appearing before them and scaring them, so maybe that's what happened here. Either way, let's finish off this article and hear the rest of her story. I interpreted the second voice as belonging to the female creature's brother, although I was never certain what he meant by saying they would come get me. Looking back, I believe the encounter may have been the beginning of my learning about them. At that time, I knew nothing about Bigfoot. It was not until the early 1990s, when I saw portions of the Patterson Gimlin film, that I realized other people had reported similar creatures. Until then, I didn't know that anyone else had experienced anything like this. I hitchhiked throughout the United States and usually traveled alone. I did not enjoy traveling with other people. I liked having the freedom to remain somewhere for a while or move quickly to my next destination. It would be almost unheard of today for a teenage girl to hitchhike alone across the country, but that was my life. I loved the freedom and the peace I found in the wilderness. Ooh. Very interesting story, folks. Now, as I said, do you think that this entity was actually having a little bit of fun with this teenager, folks? Because that's what it sounds like to me. Either way, very interesting. But now, let's move on to the next story here, folks. California experiencer claims psychological control by shape-shifting reptilian EBE. Let's read this story, folks, and hear what this experiencer has to say about her encounter with this entity. Although I realize this report may not be taken seriously, may be removed, or maybe simply be, disregarded, I have decided to tell my story anyway. I met this person on an online dating site, and after that, this individual completely took over my life psychologically, emotionally, and physically. I am 100% certain that the person I started dating in October of last year was not human, but an EBE, an extraterrestrial biological entity. From time to time, it would torment me by briefly shapeshifting into what I believe was its true form. Before this happened, I was familiar with David Icke's reptilian theory, but I never expected to experience anything like this myself, and myself either, I guess, in her words, folks. In its true form, she goes on to say, this being appeared to expand its legs and body until it was approximately 8 feet tall, so this entity could truly shapeshift. It wasn't just some sort of mental command or telepathic message or anything like that, folks. It was actually a real shapeshifter. Moving on to the next part of what she has to say, folks, and hearing exactly in her own words what happened next in her description of this being, folks. One night, I had a terrifying vision in which I was struck by a car. In the vision, I woke up in a hospital lying in the EBE's arms. I believe that vision was implanted in me for a reason, possibly to make me emotionally attached to it. The experience was both terrifying and strangely beautiful. It felt as though I had died for about 5 minutes while I was in the hospital. During that vision, I saw what people often describe as the light. I felt as if I was traveling through a wormhole into another dimension, possibly heaven. I could hear the voice of family members, and in that moment I actually wanted to die because the place was, the place, I would imagine, was probably very peaceful, but in her own words, the place I was entering felt wonderful. It was beautiful and peaceful. Then I heard my mother's voice telling me to breathe, and I snapped out of it. Very strange things continued happening to me. I had a bizarre, dreams involving medical experimentation, aliens breaking into my room, and interactions with hybrid alien offspring. The final incident that made me decide to break up with him happened late one night while I was cuddling with him. Someone knocked at my door. When I tried to get up to answer it, I realized I was paralyzed. I literally could not move. It should also be noted that this individual was extremely anti-religious for some reason. That made me begin to believe that aliens may actually be demons, and that good aliens may be what we understand as angels. This being tried very hard to persuade me that God does not exist. He told me that when I die, I will simply not be there. I will rot in the ground, and that humans do not have spirits. Well, sometimes we have heard about stories like that as well, folks, with reptilian or other alien entities being repelled by religious iconography, or with just the name of God. So maybe they are demons, or maybe something about this just unsettles these beings, folks. Either way, thrilling story so far, but let's continue with it. His physical characteristics were unusual. He had true hazel eyes, reddish-brown hair, and an extremely slim body with his rib cage showing. His tongue seemed abnormally large. He also had scars and birthmarks in random places on his body. One mark in particular looked like a scar from some kind of alien needle or injection device. It appeared as 3 triangular dots with a brown circle around them. Sometimes, while he was shape-shifting, slits would appear in his eyes. Each shapeshift only lasted approximately 1 to 5 seconds. Whenever it happened, I would immediately rub my eyes or look away, trying to convince myself that something was wrong with me, but I know I am not crazy. I believe this was his way of tormenting me. I've not been the same since the near-death experience. I truly believe this thing took advantage of me for my reproductive cells and collected them while I was asleep for cloning or for something else I cannot even imagine. Indeed. But if he's a demon, then maybe this was all for some sort of, purpose involving some anti or, I guess, demonic, work. Maybe, I'm not quite sure, folks. Either way, it is disturbing, but let's save off any conclusions till after we finish off the article and her story. If anyone has had a similar experience or has submitted a similar report, please reach out to me. I know I'm not crazy. I was 100% fine until I met him. I've never told anyone this story because I'm afraid of what others might think of me. I've been having a very hard time coping with what happened, and an even harder time expressing an emotion. I feel dead inside, dull, vague, and disconnected. I provided a fake name and email, but my cell phone number is real. Much love and good luck with your investigations, FF. Either way, folks, FF here had a dreadful encounter with this being, if indeed we take her seriously. She could be mentally ill, but I'm not quite sure. Her story does sound reminiscent of other people who've encountered reptilian beings as well, folks, with them shapeshifting. But this being then sounds like it was actually trying to torment her so much, folks. It sounds like basically the relationship ended, much like basically a normal human one would. But then again, maybe this being, even though it didn't give any outward signs of aggression towards this girl, any harm, she says that basically the shapeshifting was used as a way to torment her and stuff like that, to at least to some degree. I'm not quite sure I get that feeling from that. Maybe it could only basically, or allowed itself to basically be seen as a way basically to, command this girl, take control of her mind, perhaps. I'm trying to say, folks, here, I'm trying to say he was trying to intimidate her to some degree by showing off its true form, at least to some level. But remember, she also said that it had an incredibly long tongue and was skeletally thin, at least in its human form. Well, that's interesting, folks. If this being really was a shapeshifter, why not basically make a somewhat more healthy and, I guess, muscular and athletic form rather than some bony form that made it look sick-looking? Instead, it chose to be basically being so thin that literally the rib cage would basically be, literally showing through the skin if you saw him basically with a shirt on, right, folks? That's what I was trying to say there. What about the first story as well, folks, with basically the Bigfoot? Could or does this entity or entities have telepathic powers? Maybe this reptilian only took a form basically looking like a giant lizard because it was telepathically, manipulating FF perhaps. And what about basically the Bigfoot? Does it also perhaps have the ability to physically shapeshift? Some people have said that before, folks. I would love to know your ideas. I wouldn't be surprised if Bigfoot could actually basically be some sort of shape-shifting entity rather than what we actually was, seen by basically the witness. Maybe this is true for all of these paranormal entities. Either way, both stories are certainly out there, folks. And I hope more information comes forward from these witnesses, as well as others that can give us a clear idea about what is actually going on. Anyway, folks, we're now at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics That Are Bad For You. You can use the YouTube link down below in the description so the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure to hit the part of the bell that give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.